Hey guys, welcome back. Hey, we're going to do something today. I'm going to start a series today, and more or less it's just going to cover all the rawest, most simplest basic sets that there is. And when I say basic, I mean cut and dry basic, no extras, just basic dirt hold, basic flat set. You name it, it's going to be basic. Today I'm gonna show you how to set up just your everyday run-of-the-mill basic dirt hole set. I got a coyote crossing here at a fence line, and I'm not going to set it for real today because the fur's just not there yet. I will set it here in probably a month or two, and we'll if I do win, and if I do catch this coyote, I'll show you the result of that on a later video. Being an instructor here for Trappers Education in the state of Montana, the program is super condensed. It's very fast. They take an online course. Once they complete that, then they can take an 8-hour course, or it's mandatory, an 8-hour field day. And there'll be 6 to 8 of us instructors there, and we literally push them through the course. It's like cattle at a stockyard. I mean, we're pushing them through so fast, it's an overload of information. The biggest complaint / concern that we get as instructors is they'd really like to be able to see more of the hands-on, the actual physical setting of the traps. Unfortunately, we don't have the time to do that in this 8-hour day. We just have too much stuff that we got to do. Echo here. So with that being said, one good place to go for that stuff is go to your local Trappers Association, your fur harvesters, your fur takers, Trappers Associations, and they do a lot of stuff for the trappers to where you can get together and see different hands-on sets and see how different trappers do it. I got a saying in all my classes that if you ask 5 different trappers the same question, you're going to get 7 different answers, because one of the trappers is probably going to change his mind after hearing somebody else. It's just a fact. We all have our own ways of doing things. Whether one's better than the other, it's not for me to say. I have my ways of doing stuff, and it works for me. So if it works for you, use it. One thing in this series that I'm going to do is I'm going to show you stuff it's legal in the state of Montana. Before you, or if you were to replicate any of my sets, make sure that you check your local laws. Not everywhere is the same. So with that being said, I'll show you what I found over here, and then I'll get it set up, and we'll get started on this set. So I was walking around the other day just checking. This is just a basic fence line, and we used to have horses out here, and now that we don't, it just stays to pasture. But as you can see, they got crops over here. I believe this was alfalfa this year, and then that backs up to our property, which is just your everyday run-of-the-mill yard. We just keep it mowed down so we don't have to burn it. But one thing I noticed the other day when I was walking to my shop is this, and there's only a handful of animals in the state of Montana that'll do that. Deer will do that, but they're not going to do it right next to a post like that. They'll do it out in the middle, out in the middle of a run here, where there's a little bit of flexibility in the wire. The only thing that's going to do that here is pretty much your predators, your nest raiders, your skunks, raccoons, and then of course coyote and fox. So I know that's what this is. It's definitely coyote from my area. It's got the signatures written all over it, and so we're gonna set this up later. I'm gonna kind of get it set now, and it'll make it easier when I do go to set this later. But as you see, we got an opening right here, and it doesn't pertain so much to this area, but if you go over east of the mountains where there's people are raising sheep and stuff, they'll have woven wire on the bottom, and anytime you get a break in that woven wire, it's a dynamite location. You can always set that. The way I would set this personally and then the wind is coming from our left, so it's coming from the west and it crosses this way. That's our predominant wind. And so what I'm going to do here is, this is obviously where they're traveling anyway. I am going to put a foothold or a dirt hole right here and get that set up. And then if I do set this again for season, you'll see that I'm going to put a dirt hole right here, and I'm also going to put a urine post right here. And that's just in case he doesn't like one, he's going to check the other, and I'm going to catch a coyote in here regardless. So let me get set up, and then we'll get to it. Alright guys, so we're going to set just your basic foothold here for this. Like you see back here, we got that trail that's coming underneath the fence. I said the wind predominantly comes out of the west here where we live at here in the valley. So I'm going to put a dirt hole here, or a dirt hole here with a foothold, and when this animal is coming through, regardless of which way, the scent's going to be blowing right in its face. Like I said, when I come back to actually set this season a little later in the year, I'll put a urine post either here, depending on how this set comes out, or I might put one on the other side of the opening, and it just doubles my chances for getting them. But anyway, let's get started on this guy. So the fence and the brush kind of gives me natural backing. When you're setting foothold traps, you want to have enough backing behind and on the sides of the traps to where you can direct that canine or bobcat if you're trapping cats as well. You need to be able to tell that animal where to go with natural cover. Go play. Go on. She's wanting to play. Anyway, so we got natural backing. I'm going to actually place the trap right in this area here, and I'm going to have a dirt hole going back underneath the fence there. We'll just dig this out a little bit. The nice thing about trapping coyotes is up here in northwest Montana, we get to trap wolves too, so we try to get our coyote trapping in a little earlier in the year, and sometimes it works out where we actually get to trapping ground like this. 75 to 80% of our trapping is done in rock hard frozen ice and snow and everything else, so it's kind of nice to get a little treat like this. So I'm going to dig this trap bed, and before, well, let's go back a little bit. Before you guys start filling the comments with, well, how come you're not wearing gloves and you're touching your trap with your bare hands and all that? Down here in the valley where I do a lot of my coyote trapping, these coyotes are used to us. Okay, they're used to smelling cigarette smoke and diesel and grease and they're just used to all those smells. So I'm not as careful with scent control down in the valley where these dogs are, they're used to that stuff. Now if I'm up in the timber trapping coyotes, then yes, I have different traps for that. They're set up differently. I do wear gloves, and I'm a lot more conscious about my scent being in the area. So that's just kind of a little side note there. We'll take care of that. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to dig this out like so, and then I'm going to put my hole right in here. Now with this set, I'm not doing a lot of, making this set really shine. It doesn't need to say, hey, I'm over here. If you set on sign, which you should be doing anyway. You don't need loud lures. You don't need, you know, all those extra things to get the animals to come, you know, to your trap. These canines are here anyway, so I just got to give them a little something that's just going to turn their head. And so this won't be a big flashy set. It's not going to have big, you know, dirt thrown all over the place. It's going to be small and simple. So when I dig my trap beds out, I'll dig it out about the size of the trap, and then right in the middle of it, get me a little hole here. Now what that's going to do is that's going to help me bury my chain on my trap. That's going to be my anchoring point. And when it starts getting colder and I got to worry about freezing and melting and freezing and stuff like that, it gives it somewhere where if I do get some warm temperature and it melts the snow, it creates somewhere for that water to go rather than staying up in my trap where it can refreeze. I use wax sand anyway, so I don't really have an issue with that, but it still can happen. Even with wax sand, you get enough moisture and it gets cold enough, it can still freeze you up. So this here is just a Duke 550. It's an offset with a night latch. Very good coyote traps. They work well on bobcat as well. So this here, we'll go ahead and get this guy set. Now, for the guys that are new to trapping, and you hear all these terms, offsets and night latch and stuff like that. Offset just has to do with the jaw. Night latch, it's a preset zone for the trap. And the reason why they call it night latch is because you could literally, you know your trap is set properly in the dark without even seeing it. So there's a little notch in this dog that when you pull it down on the pan, you hear that click. Now that trap's ready to go. It's ready to fire right now. And it just, it's almost like a preset trigger on a muzzleloader. We'll get that off to the side here. There's my driver. Just got done raining a little bit. Everything's slippery and wet. So when I drive this down in there, I drive it all the way down till the loop is in the ground. And then I grab that thing and I give it a tug. So what I just did is preset that. So now I know that there's no way a coyote or a bobcat or whatever may come through here is going to pull this trap out. They'd literally have to drag or dig. I think that's an 18-inch cable. You know, they'd have to dig a lot to get out there. Once you have that preset, and again in the winter time when it gets cold, I would have this full of sand. Too centered up. I don't want my trap to be centered on my hole where the bait's going to be. You want it offset one side to the other. More or less how for coyotes, if I'm doing that, I pretty much want to line the jaw up. And I want the loose jaw, not the one with the dog. The loose jaw needs to be lined up with the hole. And that pretty much gets me a good center for the coyotes. I think one thing that all of us trappers will agree on, you know, earlier I was saying you ask 5 questions to 5 trappers, you get 7 answers. The one thing that all trappers will agree on is the absolute most important thing when setting traps, especially footholds in the dirt, is bedding the trap. if your trap is not bedded properly, you're going to come out to your sets and you're going to see a lot of this where they'll dig them out, and they're you wouldn't think it, but they know if something's wrong when they step down on it. Okay, and again, during the winter, or even this time of the year, I still use sand. It's kind of expensive and it's a pain in the butt to make, so I'm not going to use it for this purpose here. But yeah, I would line the bed of this, the trap bed, with some sand, just so I could set it in there and get, you know, real nice and tight. And then I would proceed with a little bit of sand over the top, and then I'd go with natural cover. Trap pans or trap pan covers, it's another big, you know, one guy says it's better one way, one guy says it's better the other way. I've used a lot of different stuff, and I find that for me up here, just good old-fashioned wax paper works the best. I mean, number one, it's cheap, you can get it anywhere. I'll go to the grocery store, buy a roll of it, I'll cut it in half with my saw and just beat it flat with a hammer, and then I just keep it in my pocket or in my bucket, whatever I got with me. And when I'm setting a trap, I can literally pull it out, I unroll 3 or 4 times, rip it, it's ready to go. The whole purpose of the trap pan cover, is to keep any material from getting underneath your pan. Pretty self-explanatory. So I was looking at the video, guys, and I realized that from back there you guys couldn't see anything I was doing. So this here's what we got dug out, and I've buried my hole there a little bit. That's where my chain and my anchor are going. And I've got this set off to one side or the other. Anytime you set your footholds in on a dirt hole, especially with coyotes, you want your loose jaw over here. You want that to kind of line up with the center of your dirt hole itself. You don't want to put the dog side out here, because it is possible for them to step on it this way and that dog will actually throw their paw. The trap's probably fast enough to get the toes, but we try not to do that. You want a nice deep catch. So with the loose jaw side towards the center, what I was talking about earlier when bedding a trap, there's nothing more important in setting a foothold than bedding the trap. Put my pan cover back on here. So I use, wax paper, as we've already seen. So what happened is I filmed the deal, and I set the trap and I pulled it. Went to go edit it and look at it, and I realized it did absolutely no good for anybody. So just trying to start off where I left off there. So we'll get this back up in here. Now see what I was talking about, when the trap moves, that much movement in a trap, if the canine comes in here and steps on that and it rolls underneath his foot, it's an unnatural thing for them. So they know right away that something's wrong, and being that they like to investigate everything, they'll start digging it up, trying to figure out what it is that's moving. We'll get this set in there real nice. Now what we're doing here is pretty much just putting pressure on all sides of the trap. Now that trap is rock solid. There's no movement in it whatsoever. And that's exactly what we want. We'll grab our leftover dirt here. Sit it over the top. And you just try to look at it, make it look as natural as possible. This ground here, I don't have to worry about it, but if you had some rocks and stuff show up in here, you want to get anything that's bigger than the size of a pea out of there, because if it gets in between the jaws, it could cause a pull out. That's pretty decent right there. Little stuff here on the sides kind of directs them right around to where you want. So now I know that this pad for the pan is sitting right here where this leaf's at. So if that canine comes in here at any angle, he's gonna have to be in here somewhere to get at whatever I got down in there. And if it was a little more, if it was harder to direct them, if I knew the pan was here, you know, you could put a rock in here or a stick or something. They typically won't step on odd objects that are in their way. They'll step around them, but in this case we don't need that here because there's no way for the animal to get to it from behind. So that right there would be a finished set. Once you get everything set up to this point, then you can go ahead and apply your urine, your baits, squeakers. Check those out if you don't know what those are. They're a little green plastic box. I think they take a couple AA batteries or maybe a single. I don't remember what batteries they use, but they take a few batteries. You press that button and the thing makes a little mouse squeak for 10 seconds, and then it turns off for 10 seconds, and then it runs for 10 seconds, and it does that, it just keeps going. And I've had them last over a week in a hole. They're great. They're particularly great if for some reason the wind's blowing the wrong way. One thing that's not 100% reliable on the wind, especially on canines, is sound. They can hear extremely well, and then with that little squeaker down there in that hole making that little noise, it really ups your odds. I use a lot of them. So what I do here is I go ahead and apply my bait, and like I said, they're already here, so I don't need to get nothing loud, you know, just a food-based bait. You know, just throw it down there in the bottom of the hole. I'm a big fan of sheep's wool. So I'd throw the bait down in there, and then I'd throw a little chunk of sheep's wool in there, you know, just like that, stuff it down in the hole, and then I'd throw my squeaker in there, and then another piece of sheep's wool, and cover it up. And it's great. You put your bait in there, and then, you know, if you were using lure, if you were using the lure, you know, you just put it up in here, maybe right back behind there, and then walk away, and this trap's ready to go, guys. I mean, this is I can almost guarantee you some point this season you'll see me put out a video and we'll have a coyote hung up right here. And as you can hear my chickens in the background. I'm maybe 120 yards from my house. Last year I was messing around in the backyard and I had one of those little squeaker toys, and the coyotes were going crazy out in the back, and I just kept squeaking it while I was standing on the edge of my shed, and I had 2 coyotes walk up within 7 yards of me. They got right to the corner of the fence and stared at me. So that's actually what really made me decide that I was going to use those squeakers, because they are super effective. But anyway, so that is your basic dirt hole set. It doesn't get no more basic than that. And throughout this series, we'll show, you know, rubbing sets, you name it. If there's any set in particular that you'd like to see, just put it in the comments. I'll be happy to show it to you. I'm not saying I know every set out there. Another great channel to subscribe to is Dale Billingsley. The man he's a plethora of knowledge, and he's one of those trappers that he has no ego. He wants everybody to succeed. Paul Antczak's the same way with Montana Wolf Trapper. These guys are great tools, and they don't mind helping people out. If you succeed, then they succeed as well, and that's what we should be all about. What are you doing? All right, come here. So this is my trapping dog. This is Echo. She's a Belgian Malinois. You guys see the shorts of her. All right, go on. I don't want you stepping in that. Go away. So anyway, that'll pretty much conclude this part for just the basic dirt hole trap set. If you guys have any questions, throw them in the comments. I'd be happy to answer them. And here over the next period of time before trapping season really kicks off for me, I'm going to try to do a couple of these a week, and whatever time I got, I'll fill it doing this. So guys, take care, and we'll see you on the next one.